Good evening, everyone. Very warm welcome to you from St. Francis Retreat Center here at Mepkin Abbey, and we're delighted to welcome you to this episode of the Mepkin Forum for Contemplative Ecology. We're really happy this evening to have Angela Manno with us, and I'm reading a wonderful book now called Come to the Breakfast, and some of Angela's icons are on the front cover of this book by Elizabeth Johnson. And one of the statements she makes either in an interview with her is that death takes life away, but extinction takes birth away. And so, Angela, I think we're so grateful for you to do these wonderful visual laments, to hold this space in our environment today. And so we welcome you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam and let him take it from here.
Thank you, Father Garrick, and welcome to everybody joining us this evening. So great to see this growing community. And a special welcome this evening to Angela Manno, who has been a real inspiration and a friend in this work for some years, since I first met Angela a few years back with Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm. So we're delighted to have Angela with us this evening. Angela Manno is an award-winning artist based in New York City. She is a graduate of Bard College and studied art at the San Francisco Art Institute, the Parsons School of Design, and L'École des Arts in Lacoste through Sarah Lawrence College in France. She has trained with the master iconographer Vladislav Andrejev in the ancient liturgical art of Byzantine-Russian iconography, a 3-time grant recipient from the Xerox Corporation. Manno's art has been featured in numerous solo and group exhibitions, including the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C., the Smithsonian Institute, the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, and other museums around the world. Her works reside in many private collections throughout the Americas, the Middle East, Europe, and Southeast Asia, and in distinguished public collections, including NASA and the Smithsonian Institute's National Air and Space Museum. In May 2022, Manno was commissioned by the Vatican Dicastery on Integral Human Development to create an audiovisual program to open Laudato Si Week 2022, the 7-year anniversary of Pope Francis's groundbreaking encyclical. The program, Responding to the Cry of the Earth, featured images from her series Contemporary Icons of Endangered Species and appeared on computer screens around the world as part of the global event No More Biodiversity Collapse, Rebalancing Social Systems with Nature. Manno's current series, Contemporary Icons of Threatened and Endangered Species, applies her iconographic training to a contemporary exploration of the environmental crisis and biodiversity collapse. Angela, thank you again for being with us this evening.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. And we'll turn it over to you to guide us in this contemplative practice that I know you'd like to offer.
Yes, well, I think what would be called for is just to sit back, listen, look, take deep breaths, and let the program just inspire you. And I think it's a 9-minute program, so afterwards, perhaps we could just take a little time to, in silence, absorb what we saw.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And
The sky and the air are beautiful. The earth and the sea are beautiful. By divine grace, the universe was called by the Greeks cosmos, meaning ornament. Surely the author of all created beauty must himself be the beauty of all beauty. Saint Hilary of Poitiers. How varied are your works, O Lord! In wisdom you have wrought them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Psalm 104, verse 24. I am the Florida panther. I am one of the most majestic large felines in the world. I once roamed the vast North American continent. Now I occupy only a small area of South Florida. Roads and development continue to shrink my home. Because of my need to roam, I am often killed by vehicles when trying to cross the highway. Only 100 of my kind remain in the wild. I am the Mexican blue-capped hummingbird. I live in a small area in the Mexican province of Oaxaca. My diminutive size and brilliant colors make me a wonder in the animal kingdom. My home is disappearing because of human encroachment. As few as 600 of me remain. Consequently, I am listed as endangered. I am the chambered nautilus. I am an ancient creature. I have been on this earth for about 500 million years, even before the dinosaurs. And now I am endangered. My fractal shell is a marvel of nature's design, but ocean acidification is making it difficult for me to build my calcium carbonate-based shell. Even a greater threat to me is overfishing and loss of my habitat. I am the honeybee. I work tirelessly to produce my honey, my pollen, and to carry out my irreplaceable work of pollination. My species is threatened due to the use of toxic pesticides, destruction of my habitat, and lack of forage due to monocultures. Without me, coffee, apples, almonds, tomatoes, and cocoa, just to name a few of the crops, would be wiped out. I have intrinsic value in my own right, not just my use to humans. I am the loggerhead sea turtle. I am an ancient species. I have been around since the time of the dinosaurs. I often mistake plastics floating in the ocean and plumes of oil from oil spills for my food. When I eat them, I die. Drilling often takes place in my critical habitats. Oil on beaches pollute my hatchlings and nesting areas. I am now critically endangered. I am the Andean marsupial frog. Like all amphibians, because of my permeable skin, I am extremely vulnerable to disturbances to my environment. My home in subtropical or tropical moist mountain forests and arable land is shrinking because of deforestation, logging, intensified agriculture, grazing, urbanization, pesticides, fertilizers, and pollutants, disease, climate change, and the thinning of the ozone layer. I have become an endangered species. I am a Philippines orchid. When you hear the word extinction, you probably imagine an image of a dodo or passenger pigeon. But in fact, compared with birds, mammals, and amphibians, more plants have vanished in the wild since 1900. All life depends on us. I am critically endangered in the wild, with only 50 left in my natural home. That's because people keep poaching us and selling us on the exotic flower market. I am the candy darter. I'm a tiny freshwater fish. I prefer shallow, fast-flowing streams with rocky bottoms. I have disappeared from at least half my range in the southeastern United States. Silt and sediment from logging, mining, and other activities fill in the spaces between the rocks, burying the places I need for shelter and laying my eggs. Though still endangered, 370 miles of my critical habitat have now been protected. I am being raised in captivity to reestablish me into the wild. I am considered a success story. Because of us, thousands of species will no longer give glory to God by their very existence, nor convey their message to us. We have no such right. Laudato Si, paragraph 33. While the human cannot make a blade of grass, there is liable not to be a blade of grass unless it is accepted, protected, and fostered by the human. Thomas Berry. Today we pray with and for creation as we cry out, "No more biodiversity collapse." Together we pray for the human family to uphold the integrity of creation so that biodiversity everywhere may be protected. We commit ourselves to rebalance our human systems with nature, animating kinship with all creation. God of life, help us to rediscover your regenerative pathways that ensure nourishing food, dignified work, and holistic health for all. Holy Spirit, guide us to do everything we can to end biodiversity collapse and encourage us to become your living custodians of biodiversity on Earth. Amen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Angela, for sharing that very powerful prayer with all of us. And opening our hearts and our prayers to all these creatures and their plight in the ocean deep to the forests of Florida. Deep gratitude to you for inviting us into this space of deep solidarity. And I'd love to begin our contemplative dialogue, Angela, with just hearing a little bit more about your own journey and whether there are any formative experiences in your journey that inspired you to really dedicate your work to lifting up and opening our spirits to our kinship with all these marvelous diversity of beings.
Sure, there have been so many formative experiences. You saw in the beginning the picture of the Earth from space. That was my first contemporary icon, following a very long period of study and practice in traditional Byzantine-Russian iconography. So I was very influenced by, in the beginning of my art practice, by the accounts of the astronauts and what they saw and how it changed them. To see the Earth from a distance in its wholeness, and that it was alive and terribly fragile and ineffably beautiful, as one of the astronauts commented. And so that kind of sparked my my desire to express that in artwork. I felt very moved and almost like I could experience that myself through my imagination. And so I created a series called Conscious Evolution, The World at One, that was largely inspired by the experiences of the astronauts. And it was through that I met Thomas Berry, actually, because I contacted him to ask if he would write an essay for a book that I was putting together that these artworks were going to illustrate. So once I met Thomas, I started moving in a direction that really framed the rest of my artistic output. And but I have to say, so before I ever learned Byzantine-Russian iconography, I was familiar with Thomas's work. So when practicing the traditional iconography, I was quite aware that the focus was anthropocentric and that nature was relegated to the backdrop of the human divine drama. And so eventually, you know, these two things, I start to feel a tension between the anthropocentrism of the icons and the biocentricity that is at the foundation of Thomas's work. And so that tension became a creative tension until I synthesized them with this series of endangered species. So I hope that answers your question somewhat.
Definitely. Well, thank you for tracing a little bit about your life journey and this shift from anthropocentrism or human centrism into a more biocentric or ecocentric spirituality, which certainly Laudato Si is calling us into, and so many of the signs of our times. I'm curious, Angela. I mean, you mentioned the influence of Thomas Berry, and we've talked before in previous programs about this idea of the universe as a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. And I'm curious, especially, in your opening prayer, you kind of suggest this idea of each being as being a unique revelation of the divine, and that being such a powerful message to really take into our hearts. And I'm curious if you could say any more about the theological or sort of spiritual depth that has really called you into this work.
Yes. Well, actually, it was something that Thomas Aquinas wrote in the Summa Theologica, and it was Thomas Berry who I first heard quote this, and it says it all to me, and hopefully I will be able to say this accurately. But it was something to the effect that because the divine could not image itself forth in any one being, it created the great diversity of things, so that what was lacking in one would be supplied by the other, and together they would manifest the divine more completely than any single being whatsoever. That's to me, the image of the divine is creation, all of creation. So, and there's only one everything. So when people, start to talk about, well, what can we afford to lose? We really can't afford to lose anything, because everything has a purpose. Everything has a niche, and everything is related to everything else, which is throughout Laudato Si. So it's really great to see this convergence, this kind of thought. And I think people are working it out now with what is the image of the divine as we see it today. And I see it changing in this direction.
Wow, thank you, Angela. I'm really struck by what you said about Aquinas's message that in some ways the grandeur of creation is made complete by this grand diversity of beings, and the idea that we're somehow complete by the other, right? It is in that relationship, in that community, that we ultimately consecrate our lives. And your work is so beautiful about really plunging us into these various different ecosystems that maybe we don't think about actively, and bringing us into the plant world, into the deep ocean with the tiny nautilus shell. I think you're really helping to bring alive these deep theological insights in this new kind of creative synergy that you're bringing forth. I know, Angela, that you've also been inspired to use natural tempera paints. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about your process using ecologically sensitive materials, and then how you go about, like, how do you decide what you plan to paint, and how do you go about moving through that process?
Sure. Well, working with egg tempera is one of the most fun things and sensual things that I've ever done. I've worked in a lot of different media, but egg tempera is basically it's an ancient medium. This particular form was developed in the monasteries of 14th through 16th century Russia. And so basically you take an egg yolk and you separate it from the white and you mix it with some distilled white vinegar to make an emulsion with some water. And then that becomes what you use what you mix with your powdered pigments. And so the method that I studied is a multi-layered process. And traditionally, you start off well with a white board, which represents pure consciousness. And then you put clay down where traditionally you're doing, say, like a saint that has a halo. So on top of the clay, you put gold leaf, and the clay has a little bit of glue in it. So you have to actually breathe on the clay, the surface, and that the moisture from your breath activates the glue, so your gold can adhere to it. So it represents God breathing life into Adam. So every step is symbolic. Every color is symbolic. And when you're working with images of animals, you kind of step away from the prescribed pattern because they're different. When you do traditional icons, you work with a template that have been passed down over the centuries. But when I do these contemporary icons of endangered and threatened species, the templates are there. They're everywhere. You see it in ecosystems, and you see it in individual species. So, and you asked why I choose which ones to work on. Well, it's a combination of things. So first of all, I've always wanted to keep a balance of all the categories, fish, mammal, birds, reptiles, amphibians, plants, etc. Because generally the more charismatic critters, the mammals, the people are aware of more or less what's happening with them. They're more in the news. But then again, I mean, people have heard about the insect apocalypse and, the diminishment of insect populations. So, so it was important for me to keep a balance, which I've done, actually. So far, I have 36 of these icons, and I have 5 of each. Does that add up to 36? Anyway, I'm not really good at math, but then sometimes if something will come to my attention, for instance, I had maybe 1 or 2 more mammals to go, and I heard about the plight of the pangolins. I hope people know what they are. They're this scaled mammal, and they're on several continents, and they're being poached almost to extinction for their scales. And these scales are purported to have magical powers, but it's the same thing as the rhino horn and some of these other species that are being poached because of the body parts. So I chose the pangolin, and pretty much that's how it goes. Sometimes I will I want to work with red, with the color red. Because I think of the whole series and how it all fits together. So it's like, oh, I haven't had any red in this series. So I will do research, and I found the scarlet honey creeper from Hawaii that's severely endangered now because of global warming. Actually, they keep having to go higher to higher elevations where these mosquitoes are unable to breed, which they catch some kind of infection from them. So I would say those elements go into my choosing the images.
Beautiful. It's a really inspiring process, Angela. And I'm reminded of what Mary Evelyn Tucker has told me about Thomas Berry's meditations on the earliest land mammals, and he was kind of puzzled by this question: how did mammals move onto the land? Like, how did life move from the ocean onto the land? We kind of sometimes assume that that's a seamless answer, but if you actually think about it, it's this really great mystery. And Thomas Berry apparently said something along the lines of, the land was alluring to those creatures. There was something about the land that beckoned them. And I wonder if that has sort of featured in your process at all, if you feel like you are somehow called by particular creatures or somehow allured or drawn to resonate with some of these incredible creatures.
Well, I would say right from the beginning, I have not done any African animals. And that is because I really would like to go to Africa and experience them. So that's what beckons me at this stage. But I think they all have their appeal, every time I start a new one, I actually notice how there are repetitions of patterns, from, I'll see like scales on a reptile, for instance, and I'll think, well, that reminds me of a pattern of feathers, say like on the hummingbird. And so there's kind of a repetition of a theme throughout the created world. It's, well, of course, it's all we all share similar DNA, but I also think, this is going to sound funny, but they could have been getting away from something in the ocean too.
That's a very interesting question.
Like something was calling, but something was maybe missing. I mean, have you seen those fish that have feet? Has anybody seen those? I mean, they walk along the and it's like they're kind of in the middle of this evolutionary tract,
So fascinating. And to think about our deep genetic kinship with all of life, the sharing over 90% of our DNA with primates, and sharing huge portions of our DNA with so many other creatures It's really quite stunning. But it's one thing to understand that scientifically, and it's another thing, I suspect, to really bring that into our spirituality. And I think that is a really powerful synthesis that your art is helping us to do. And I'm curious, Angela, I mean, your icons have been traveling with you around the world, seemingly. I think you mentioned that they may be traveling to Rome next year for this 10th anniversary of Laudato Si and this Jubilee here. And I'm curious how the reception has been as these icons, as these sacred presences are incarnating in more places. How has the reception been?
It's really phenomenal. I mean, I just recently showed 16 of them at the Earth Law Colloquium in Manhattan during Climate Week. And, you know, it just moves people very deeply. And I know it has to do with the beauty. One of the things about icons, traditional icons, is the material beauty draws you in to the reality that is being depicted behind those images. So somehow that communicates itself to people. So it's been very, very well received. And even some of the more controversial, like I always thought, you didn't see it in the video, but I did one of an orangutan mother and child, and I thought I would get some pushback on that, but I don't. There's something about their presence that speaks to people really deeply. And I'm always gratified to see it, you know, to see people being moved. And like I said, I do think the beauty is primary.
Totally. There's that expression that we cannot save something we don't love.
Yes.
This idea of learning to expand our circles of love to encapsulate all these creatures, you know, and if that first comes with awareness, right? To be aware of, you know, when I purchase something, where does it come from? What bioregion was it drawn from? What effect did it have on the creatures of that land or that water? And I want to ask you about that, but first, I think it might be a good chance to draw you out on those particular icons of the orangutans, Angela, and also the emperor penguins, where you have these very beautiful dyads of the mother and child, orangutan and the baby orangutan, and then the mother emperor penguin with the baby. And I'm curious what draws you into that sort of experience of the sacred feminine, of that deep maternal archetype, as Thomas Berry would talk about, that maternal archetype of creation.
Well, you know, when it comes to the penguin, you're not sure if it's the father or the mother that's taking care of the chicks, you know? So I think, you know, the answer, you alluded to it before, is love. So I guess it's, you know, maternal or paternal love, but it's caring. And you know, one of the things I remember Thomas saying a long time ago is that we have to expand widen our love, to include all of creation. And it's a slow sensitizing process. I mean, it's worked on me over the years. I mean, I stopped eating animals, I couldn't, I mean, just one day it was like, that's it. I can't anymore, So, but you're right. I mean, being aware of where your clothes comes from, like, is it leather? That's an animal's skin, So, I mean, we're re-educating ourselves, I think, because we've just been, so focused on ourselves that, and using anything for our own benefit. And just completely being unaware of its impact on other beings. And I do, I mean, I don't know if anybody's been watching these nature documentaries, especially with David Attenborough, or there's one called Life on Planet Earth that traces the 5 extinctions. It's a series, and it's just amazing with the kind of ability that they have now in cinematography to get so intimate that it can't help but just give you a sense of awe and wonder. And I think the more people focus on it, the more they will know, and the more they will grow to love these creatures. I mean, I've always loved animals since I was a kid, so now I'm getting to do this, which is really a great honor,
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up first the emperor penguins, because just last week I was watching a documentary about emperor penguins, and you're right in saying that, to my understanding, the male actually stays with the baby while the female goes out to hunt for fish, and the male stays and feeds the baby through their phlegm, as long as he can, until she comes back with a full belly to sustain the chick. And it's just so sobering to see these babies. At one point, the bigger penguins form this circle, and the babies have a little daycare together where they're huddled, in this mass. It's the only way they can survive these incredibly harsh, cold winds of Antarctica. And it's just so profound that the earth, in the form of the penguin, has learned how to survive the winter in Antarctica, and through this deep cooperation. And when you actually enter that world, which, I mean, for me, I hadn't learned about the emperor penguin in some years, it really just brought me back into this just extraordinary dynamic. And it also kind of reminded me that capacity for nurturance is available to all of us, right? And in many ways, I think men need to integrate that, the anima, as Carl Jung would say, or that inner feminine, or that nurturing quality, as much as women do. And yeah, I'm grateful that you bring up childhood, right? And the sort of early experiences that have shaped your work. Because I think many of us find ourselves coming back to these really formative experiences in our childhood, right? And how our vocations can in some ways be an enfleshment of what we intuited early on in our lives. So Angela, we're gonna break shortly to go into some discussion groups, some breakout rooms. But maybe before we do that, I just wanted to ask, are there any particular practices that you recommend or ways of manifesting this ecological spirituality that you find particularly potent, that help animate your spirit and keep you going?
Well, I just recently read an article in National Catholic Reporter by Christina Leaño.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the associate director of the Laudato Si movement. And it's called Praying. She has a series called Praying with Creation. And the name of this particular article was, I'm going to paraphrase it, but I prayed Lectio Divina with a pine cone. And what I'm saying is that just simply gazing, going out into nature and looking and listening and being quiet is, for me, is a way to connect, but it's savoring nature. And at the same time, out of that, you want to save nature. This is, this has come from the quote from E.B. White. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning, it's hard to know whether to save or savor the world. And so I would recommend that. And I know people don't have, oh, speaking of which, that's my cat. She's enjoying the conversation. I know it's hard for some people to get out into nature, but I would say that it's essential. Yeah.
Thank you, Angela.
Mm-hmm.
So much to sit with in your very powerful remarks. And so I thought we would break for about 10 minutes in small breakout rooms. And so we can have a chance in small groups to introduce ourselves, maybe say where we're calling in from and what is resonating with us from what Angela has shared. So Joy, feel free to work your magic if you're with us.
I gotcha. I'll send everybody to the rooms.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. was very happy to be put back in a breakout room with those who had attended our last Contemplative Ecology retreat in September at Mebkin Abbey among the 3,000 acres of forested land along the Cooper River. It was really great to be back in community with a remarkable group that shared a very powerful in-person experience, which we hope to expand upon. I know that in the spring, Beth Norcross will offer a retreat on the wisdom of trees at Mebkin Abbey. So I hope maybe Father Garrick at the closing could say some more about that experience, but so great to be growing this community. And so now we're going to enter our question and answer portion with Angela, where folks can offer anything that they want to ask Angela. And a few questions emerged from our group that I thought I would relay. And maybe I'll just start with the first one, Angela, but folks in our group were curious about your early relationship with animals. You said you'd always loved animals, but can you think of any early experiences that really stay with you or somehow spurred you in this direction for your life's work?
Well, I lived actually in suburbia, but we had woods behind us. So we were always down there, and exploring. And unlike kids today, you couldn't get us inside. And I think one of the experiences that really changed me is my, I had some cousins, male cousins that were very, they were cruel to animals. And it really upset me. And I won't go into the details, but I have to say that it did affect me profoundly, just to see an animal suffer without any way of defending itself. So, and then of course, when you get older and you just go to school and then suddenly you're not around nature anymore. I kind of lost a part of myself, and now I get to consider them and love them again the way I used to. So.
Thank you, Angela. And we'll welcome folks to use the React button where you can raise your hand virtually. Feel free to also type a question in the chat. Angela, we also had a question from our group that was curious about the icons traveling to Rome next year. And if you could say anything more about that sort of platform at the Vatican or on an international stage for the icons.
Well, yeah, thanks for the question. So right now, the venue will be at the Australian Catholic University, which is right in near Vatican City. And there have been a lot of people, like, as you know, that program was commissioned by the Vatican Dicastery for Integral Human Development. So there are quite a few people over there in Rome that are familiar with my work, and they will get to hopefully get to see it in person. So that's kind of exciting. But we still are working on funding to get the artwork over there. So we'll see how it goes. And it will also, I think I mentioned that it will be going to Assisi as well. So it'll be during the season of creation. And like you said, the Jubilee and 10th anniversary of Laudato Si. So.
Wow, it'd be so amazing to have the icons travel to the homeland of St. Francis. I mean, how incredible will that be?
Yeah, it'll be wonderful.
Yeah. I know Grace has her hand up. So Grace.
Yes, thank you so much for being here and talking about your work. I'm an artist and I'm very moved by what you do. And I think, in this age of instant entertainment and lots of sound bites and everything, your images, just to be able to sit with something so beautiful, as people in ancient days sat with the saint, to sit with that and to have such a pause in such a beautiful image of a part of creation that is endangered is a very important thing that you're doing, in my opinion. It reminds me, there's a little correlation I have today with listening to NPR, and they were talking about the Nobel Prize today given to two scientists who discovered, from looking very closely at two worms that looked a little unusual, that they had some little thing unusual about them. And I thought, these two scientists are kind of like you. I mean, they're looking that closely to see this slight unusual thing in this worm that ended up creating a discovery about RNA, So I just want to uplift the importance of the work you're doing, also in contrast to our media, which is just so flushed with too much. And it's just a beautiful thing. But I don't know if you want to reflect any more about your experience of being, I imagine, meditating when you do these pieces.
Well, I'll be happy to respond, because one of the things is, some of these brushes are just like a few hairs on them, and you really have to concentrate. So sometimes I have to hold my breath when I'm making a line, because, when you're breathing, your hand and your body move slightly. So that's how intense it is. And it's like other forms of meditation in that way, that you really are super focused on what you're doing. And the other thing is you're working on these images that are these animals that are so complex, their design. And so it's a very, I mentioned this in the beginning, it's a very sensual type of practice, and it's slow and it takes time. And so, to your comment about like everything so fast, and, you try and watch something that's online or on TV, and, the way they edit so fast, it's like, this is the complete opposite. And it's physical, so a lot of people are starting to do designing and painting digitally and stuff. So this is like, these are real materials like egg and pigments and gold. And so it's very grounding. Yeah.
Well, I think that people pick up when they see your work, the reverence that you've had in making them. I think that comes through.
Good. I don't know if anybody's going to be up in the Burlington, Vermont area, but I'm having a show at the University of Vermont where you can see them. And then at the Mercy Center in Connecticut from November 3rd to the December 15th. So you can actually, there's a couple of places where you can see them now in the flesh, so to speak.
Certainly.
And if you just go to my website, there's something called Notes and News. And if you go there, it'll tell you my whole schedule for the rest of the year. So maybe I'll see you.
Certainly hope some folks can see the icons for yourself physically, because it's quite a contemplative experience, very moving experience. Martha, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, knowing that we're in the 6th grade extinction, and you yourself dealing with this subject, reading and learning about the very sad stories of so many species. I myself am a wildlife biologist, and there are many days when I'm overcome with grief. And I'm interested, if you're willing to share how you deal with your grief. Maybe it's the process of, I'm not an artist, but maybe it's the process of doing art itself that helps with that. Or maybe you have other ways, if you are willing to share how you would process that grief.
Yes, I think if I weren't doing this, I probably couldn't handle it. I feel by doing this, I am engaging with these creatures, and I actually have hope. As dire as it is, I think it was Eric Fromm said in The Art of Loving, it's irrational to believe that the future is going to be what it is today. Some people lose hope. And, because things are so bad right now that it's always going to be that way. But we have agency, and every one of us is implicated in this to take action on behalf of all of creation. And so I just made a decision that I think you might know Sandra Steingraber. Do you know her? She's a biologist, and she calls it well-informed futility. When you just know too much and you sit there and you're just paralyzed. So the antidote to that is meaningful action. So not only am I doing these icons, but I donate 50% to various conservation organizations. I'm partnering now with the Wildlife Justice Commission. I don't know if you know these people. They're incredible. So their mission is to disrupt and dismantle transnational wildlife crime and trafficking. So there are so many ways to be involved, and we can't hesitate. Now is the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm moved by their beauty, and I moved to do that kind of work. But everybody can decide what it is that they care about, and then let your life be a testimony to that. Whatever it is.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you do.
Thanks for your question.
Thanks, Martha. We did have a question in the chat. We'll go to Diana and Gerard next, but Sarah, a few minutes ago, wrote this question. What was it like to collaborate with Sister Elizabeth Johnson, who wrote that recent book, Come Have Breakfast, where your icons are on the front cover?
Well, that just kind of happened by magic. I didn't really have much to do with it, except that the publisher Robert Ellsberg suggested using my work on the cover. So those images already existed. But we did give a presentation not too long ago, I think it was September 4th, where I did like a PowerPoint presentation talking, about how I make the work, and with a lot of illustrations. And then I turned it over to Elizabeth. So it was wonderful to have that kind of interplay, between her work, which she said she feels that she paints with words. So we definitely resonate with each other. And a funny thing is that when I was quite young, I was at a boarding school that was run by the Sisters of St. Joseph's, which is her, that's her order. So it's very interesting to have that come full circle.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. We'd love to hear from Diana and Gerard.
I think we're unmuted. Are we unmuted? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Manno, for all you've shared, especially the video. And it's really exciting to see the animals with the way you've developed the window kind of look behind them and the framing of it. It's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Diana and I, we both share sort of a traditional Catholic childhood and upbringing, and somehow through a lot of ups and downs, we've managed to lapse and then come back, and we're part of a parish in North Carolina. Childhood experiences, I'll introduce it with this. Childhood experiences for me were positive. Growing up in the church, growing up in the Catholic schools, living a block or two away, especially with the nuns and priests. I'm taking too much time. I'll just say, one of the pastors had a love of animals that was remarkable, the Monsignor, and I don't know how the squirrels got so close to him, but he just kind of stood there, and the squirrels would he probably fed them, and we never saw him feed them. But I wanted to say, icons. Diana and I have noticed we don't really collect icons, but we've been given them, cards and stuff. I'm part of Pax Christi USA, and we both are, and we participate a lot. We're on one of the national teams, the anti-racism team. So that's the background. There's one icon that just really just took my breath away, and I haven't looked at it because it's been in the bathroom in a drawer. And I found it a week or two ago, and it's an old beat up card. Let me hold it up here.
Oh, okay.
This is William Hart McNichols, his work. This is the Immaculate, what's it called? The Triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Let me read what that's all about, because if you look carefully, there's destruction in the background. Mary, right here, the icon herself, is standing in the way of a nuclear blast, Hiroshima or Nagasaki, right there. So it's a prayer for peace on the back, but from Pax Christi. When Mary appeared at Fatima, she urged the children to pray for an end to war and announced that, in quote, in the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. This image shows Mary blocking a nuclear blast, calling us to abolish war and nuclear weapons and to live the nonviolent love and peace that is stronger than death and war. The icon commemorates the 60th anniversary of the U.S. bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. I'll leave it at that. Reactions. I'll leave it to reactions. There's a quote by John Paul II on the back, because this came out in 2004. Yeah.
Do you know, do you know there's a book on Father McNichols?
No.
Yes, it just came out. It's from Orbis, and it's called All My Eyes Can See or something. Does anybody know the exact title? But it's all his work, it goes back to his, his younger days. And I think you would love it.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, we'll put them on the list.
Yeah, well, it's very illustrated, so it's got a lot of very kind of controversial icons that he did. And I just learned about him recently. So
The other person, I don't want to take up any more time because it's running short, but the other person that comes to mind are the illustrations of Fritz Eichenberg. Dorothy Day loved those, and they're books that show his, what kind of illustrations are those? Is anybody aware of those? Have you seen them?
I haven't, no.
Mm-hmm. We have a book around, but it's definitely gathering dust, and can't really locate it. But look up Fritz Eichenberg. He did. There's a beautiful illustration of Mary at the foot of the cross. Jesus has just died. There's another one of the Transfiguration that he's done. They're devastating in their beauty and in their passion.
Is he the one who
black and
illustrates
white,
the Catholic worker? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is he the one
Yes.
who illustrates the Catholic worker?
He is.
Yes, yeah. So that's, I think, woodcuts.
They were woodcuts, that's right.
Yes. Great.
I'm a member. It's a penny a copy.
That's right.
The Catholic workers.
But they need more than that, though.
I know it's
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it right now. Very interesting. I've never
Yes.
seen these before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Woodcuts.
Yeah. Any last questions or thoughts for Angela?
I have a question. What do we do? What do we do in our group with Sandra and Martha? What do we do to save these precious creatures? How can we advocate to society today when half of them don't even want to listen? We're in a microwave society, as Matthew Kelly puts, and not a crockpot society. And I feel that's very true. So what do we do?
So, are you asking me?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Well, so what I've decided to do is, since I can't do very much as an individual, but I can help organizations that have a lot of clout. So I support the Center for Biological Diversity. You should look them up. I also support the Earth Law Center because they're working on changing the laws. They're international. And the Wildlife Justice Commission, that they are intervening with major wildlife trafficking. So that's how I do it. And I mean, but there's all kinds of ways, you could volunteer, you could go, at a sanctuary.
Well, the interesting thing, because in June, I was telling Sandra and
And Martha, that I found my forever job. I work for the University of Georgia Skidaway Institute of Oceanography, and in Savannah, Georgia, and I'm the receptionist welcome center there. It's a great job. We have fish, we have turtles, we have things that we educate the public with. We have programs, the Trawl to Trash, that is excellent. We're very busy in the summertime. We have summer camps. We have great educators, and we still propose a grant or try to find a project that will enhance our community and our public and educate them through sea grants. So come and visit us and see the beauty that we have and how we can protect our living shorelines. Oh man, Angela, you got to come to Savannah. I'll show you around.
Okay. Well, you know how to get in touch with me because I'm online, so that's easy.
Yeah. So we have a living shoreline that a couple of artists created, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's a multi-sensory exhibit. Beautiful. So come and visit. We're doing our part, I think.
That's great. That's all, any of us can do is just pick something and then go for it. And you'll have the best companions. Right? As Thomas said, at the end of his 80th birthday celebration, he told that story about the two American Indians, and one was a little bit older, and he said, but they were embarking on a really, really difficult journey, and he said, well, I don't know how are we going to, how are we going to pull this off? And he said, well, it's not. It's very difficult, but we'll have good companions along the way. And I found that with anything that I've done a lot of work, anti-fracking, anti-nuclear, anti-military, coming into, densely populated areas or pristine wilderness areas. And that's where I've met the most incredible people. And I'm still meeting. I mean, there's just so, I always say that if good people stop doing what they're doing, the world would implode in a second. There's a lot of people working. And so you have to keep heart and find your tribe and work from, your feelings of love.
I found mine.
Yeah.
I found mine. Yeah. I'm blessed, for sure.
Well, such a beautiful note to round out on, Angela. I know we're coming toward the close of our program, but I just wanted to extend a deep gratitude for all of us as part of the Mebken Abbey community, for you and your icons gracing us with your presences this evening, and for all the amazing work you're still doing. I put your website in the chat so folks can follow your work and get in touch with you moving forward. And I just wanted to invite everybody to our next gathering, which will be the first Monday of November, on November 4th, for our next Contemplative Ecology gathering. Father Garrick, any parting message from you?
Well, it's been a wonderful evening to kind of hold the tension between lament and awe and wonder. And thanks again, Angela. Just to mention the first weekend of May, Beth Norcross is doing a retreat on the wisdom of trees. We're bringing Sam back to do a weekend on Gen Z, contemplative ecology for Gen Z generation, and then to bring him back for another whole week of contemplative ecology. So keep focusing on our website, and you'll see other offerings we're making. So blessings, and let's continue to do the good work of contemplative ecology.
Thanks to all.
Any blessings to you all. Thank you.
Keep hope alive.
Thank you.
Mhm.